like to briefly introduce and present the purpose of this interview as civil society actors and as an organization, intercultural dialogue platform that's in civil society project. We were thinking about what this situation of crisis can teach all of us and how we can contribute to civil society with those lessons learned. And we were thinking about interviewing people that are in the civil society and have a lot of expertise in it. So that's why we are having this interview with Mr. Cenap Aydin. I hope I'm pronouncing right. And we would like to briefly ask you to introduce yourself, maybe, so everyone would understand your background, maybe.
Okay, thank you. Hello from Rome. I am Mr Cenap Aydin. I'm originally from Istanbul, Turkey, where I was born and raised and did my first university degrees. Then I moved to Rome in 2004, and since then I have been living in this lovely city, in the eternal city, the capital of Italy. What I'm doing here, I did my further studies here at the Pontifical universities which are related to the Holy See, to the Vatican, and some other Italian universities too. I did my research. I am a sociologist of religion by training, and I have started here a new center. I'm one of the co-founders of the center called Istituto Tevere, Tevere Institute. It's a center for intercultural and interreligious dialogue. Beside that, I'm actively involved in another non-governmental organization, Religions for Peace Italy. I'm in the governing body, national governing body of the Religions for Peace Italy, and some others too. I'm so much engaged beside my research in the field of sociology religion. I'm actively involved in the field of intercultural, interfaith, and interreligious dialogue. I put these three adjectives to be more inclusive. Sometimes they have this problem how to define this dialogue. So I would like to put the three of them. And yeah, this is my life basically. And then just till these days, I have been also traveling a lot around the world for my work. But at the moment, I'm in Rome. This is first time happening to me. I'm in Rome for the last month. I haven't been anywhere. It's something very strange for me.
Firstly, welcome, Cenap. It's very good to see you here.
Thank you.
My question will be more about your profession. So I'm working also about the civil society issues, civil society cases. So what we saw is solidarity is one of the biggest tools to be effective in the area. So you're also working for a civil society organization. What would you like? You're also agreeing that solidarity is a main thing, one of the main things to be effective in the field, to be concerned by the states. And just to finish the question, like considering your long-term involvement in the civil society sector, would you like to share your experience and also your ideas?
Thank you. Now, just solidarity, of course, is a main pillar of the civil society organizations because, you know, if you look at also how do we define the civil society, the area of civil society, where state and the private sector could not access and, you know, what just really happening, you know, on the grassroots level. And over there, you all need, of course, first, there's a trigger. I mean, that trigger is how you actually encourage people to, you know, work together and to help each other. And that's very much, you know, linked to the idea of solidarity. And you can find solidarity in different inspirations. Could be a religious one, a very secular, ideological one, etc., etc. But that is a very human thing because, you know, this is by definition, we are interdependent, you know, beings. So we always need each other. And, you know, maybe lastly, in the last decades with so-called, you know, this discourse of globalization, individualism, maybe we have kind of forgotten that, not everywhere, but at some levels of our lives. And this crisis may be just reminding us again, you know, what does it really mean and our need of solidarity. On my, personal experience, what I could just, give, of course, I have some experience of in Turkey, but just much more focusing on now where I'm living in Italy. And this is, again, I would like to start with those Italian culture. This also sometimes interesting because how the cultural, aspects of a society could just promote solidarity. In the Italian society, you can see lots of grassroots level, activities. Just, sometimes in the neighborhoods, but actually where I'm living here, in my neighborhood, there are the spontaneous committees, which are born through an act of solidarity, just helping out to immigrant people who are living in our neighborhood, helping out to elderly people who could not access, to basic services, who are sort of excluded, from the society. For sometimes they just have to live in loneliness because they don't have any relatives anymore. Just, people usually, over 80 and 90 years old. And beside that, of course, another aspect of solidarity is usually happening when there is a actual problem of the neighborhood. I can just give an example. There's a park here, and that park was not organized, by the municipality, and people were just expecting they would just come and inspect, and they can just give, another shape of this park, but it never happened. So this spontaneous committee, they just created these mechanisms, writing petitions and inviting people every Saturday to clean up this park, and then just give an example through social media saying that, okay, we are here, we are the citizens of this neighborhood, we are the residents, we take care of this place, but we have limited time. And the very idea is just calling, in this case, not on a solidarity happening among people, but then they would like to involve the state apparatus in this solidarity discourse and saying that also now this is your turn, we are doing our job, we are showing, we are demonstrating what we can do for our neighborhood. Now, please, you join and take this, task, so it becomes something sustainable. Because, of course, citizens, even though they have the idea of solidarity and they show that, but on the other hand, we have to also make this clear. We shouldn't be actually in the cases of, if we had the good examples, best examples, whatever, what we can call that. Okay, just put this burden on this civil society organizations, and then the states, just could do. Okay, they are not supposed to do anything like that. That could be, I think, this balance. This is my, experience. But lastly, I could just say, the very recent while I am actually living here, because when you could just go out and meet people, the act of solidarity could be more concrete. Of course, you can just now make them online, but now we are inventing actually the new ways of solidarity. It's not just, of course, you go to the Facebook page, and then obviously you see the Sant'Egidio community providing soup kitchen for people who do not have access to, means at the moment, because, it's a big economic crisis too. Some people who are staying, but if you have, enough money, so it could be a nice holiday for you. But if you're a person that you are supposed to work every day to bring their daily bread home, they are really suffering. So organizations like Sant'Egidio, they are providing the soup kitchens, and okay, you can just send some money and then just be part of this, charity. But on the other hand, we should also invent some other ways of doing that. What we can do is, I'm just trying to, organize with some friends. It's become very spontaneous. We are just, making the list of people who are lonely, elderly, sick, and then we are just calling them. So this is a basic problem. There are some psychologists, or they're also giving their services, through the state municipality organizations, but you can imagine they could not access everyone. So people need to talk, just to share their worries, their sufferings, because this is not a very lovely moment for everybody. So this is another way of just showing solidarity, I guess.
Cenap, I would like to intervene. So a month ago, the virus seemed so far away in China, and it has recently spread, and we are living a very unthinkable situation. And we have all have had to adjust our lives. According to you, what can this situation teach us?
A very interesting moment. Really, it's kind of shocking because I lived this through in two cities before the Italy decided for lockdown. I was locked up. I was in New York City, and people were not at the beginning of this month. Last month, sorry, March, and people were not paying attention at all. I mean, since I was coming from Italy, I was so prudent, but people were not really interested. Now and then, just oh, poor you, you are now going to Italy. Maybe you should stay here. I mean, why you are going back to Rome? But the thing is, now what we are learning is this is. I mean, I will be very maybe cliche, but really, I'm just sharing what I really feel about it. We are rediscovering our fragility. We are really very fragile beings on this earth. Usually, we have this idea of just being very powerful. Oh, we have some money, and I can just let's put it a very quick way. Okay, just especially for us who are living in the richest part of the world, and we are, Westerners, etc. And what was that? I mean, I can just open just my computer and just go to the page of the Ryanair or whatever page, Sky Scanner, whatever. And well, next weekend, where I can go? Maybe I have some time. I can go to London. It's just get some fancy little holiday in London, and then just see some friends and some fish and chips, and then just come back to Rome. It's lovely. That's true for my friends who are living in the UK. That is so easy now. That sort of, that we're just feeling very powerful about that. We can just travel and we can go everywhere. I can just go anytime out and then just pick up something to eat. This is, very well. In Italy, what is one of the very basic daily activities, two of them I can just say, picking up an ice cream or just going to a bar and, sharing a coffee with a friend of yours. They are now impossible activities, very usual, very part of our daily life. And then, the first days you don't really understand what is that. I mean, just you say you're just calling your friends, you get this moment, a difficult one, etc. But now, I'm really understand. We are discovering not only fragility. Second thing I could add, we are also discovering our limits. We are not limitless. With different perspectives. Okay, so death has become a very relevant issue for all of us. All of us are suffering, and then we are suffering not just people we know, but we see this all the lists around. The Johns Hopkins University is just publishing, and we are becoming more and more, I think, human, because this is the human condition, as I can some philosophers. And the human condition is the fragile human beings rediscovering their limits and rediscovering that they maybe just should find again sort of their natural habitats in which they could be maybe more efficient and happier, not only for themselves, but for the whole humanity. That is something, I'm not just trying to go to the conclusions, but this is actually work in progress, and we will be going through this, process, and we will learn really a lot. I just mentioned two aspects, but it is a really important school, like 3-4 PhDs altogether for everyone else who is conscious about it, actually. And that consciousness is very important, that we are really aware what's really going on. And that's why I'm just trying to, divide my time, just not only focusing on news, whatever, but I started reading some philosophical texts, some poetry, especially poetry about suffering, and poetry about, reflections on the nature, etc. That's really helping out.
Did you also start to read the plug, as everyone does nowadays?
Not yet. No, not yet. Pas encore. J'espère. Pas encore.
Okay.
Cenap, in line with this, since we are experiencing this crisis, and since we're slowly getting back to ourselves and maybe also to our neighbors, do you think that solidarity is actually the way to get over this crisis too? If yes, how do you see this?
For one aspect, yes, that's important because, in not only in Italy, but in every country, what I'm just observing, especially in the United States, because they have a very fragile health system. They don't have a universal public health system. That's why it's very challenging over there too, more challenging over there too. Of course, the state and the public institutions, they have a great responsibility to maintain the public health because they have the all information and they have the infrastructure. But of course, without the basic idea of solidarity at the grassroots level, we could not really overcome these problems. What's happening, I haven't just seen that because I could not go out to my place, but I have seen many pictures in the Facebook in some neighborhoods in Rome, in the small squares of the neighborhoods, people just brought lots of food and leaving them over there. Because some people know that not everyone else has the full access to the supermarket, etc., etc. So that's very basic things. I think we just show us that people now, of course, now the municipality started, helping out and then just made a list of people and they will give some money and they can just also have the basic needs, etc. But, before that, people started, even on the social media, just, sending messages saying that, okay, I'm available if you need anything, I can give that. This is, again, a rediscovery because in our Western societies, we are sort of, instructed, educated that we should be really self-sufficient. This is something, a virtue, praised and so much, promoted. And then just, okay, I have to be self-sufficient. Why should I need other people? But this is sort of an illusion, we are not discovering this was sort of an illusion. And that illusion does not include, of course, exclude the idea of just, I'm just fulfilling myself and I'm discovering myself through my education, etc. I don't want to just mix the levels up. But the thing is, in order to also really live myself as a human being, that's by definition, I need to be solidarity with other people. And another aspect I would like to say, it's not all just helping out. Okay, people are in need, and so I help them out, or I should show. No, it's not the case. It's more complicated. In this very moment, if I would like to really keep my mood also positively, and if I would like to really be part of the society in a, I would say, productive way, this solidarity, first of all, is actually necessary for me. What I'm doing, if I have, enough means to help out other people, it doesn't mean people are just, they are in need of my help and I just should help them. No, I need to help them so that really I can understand my human existence. Okay, so it's a little bit complicated. Maybe I didn't really put into the good wording there, but this is a very, mutual and interactive way of rediscovering of our own existence. I will say, maybe using the term of Levinas, French philosopher, just calling that, how can I discover the other in the myself in the face of other? And this is the very crucial moment, actually, that we are called, to discover ourselves in the face of other, and looking at us, looking into our eyes, saying that, okay, I'm like you, a human person, and this is a moment maybe we can really understand that we are part of a bigger human family.
I wanted to ask you a question because we have spoken about solidarity between individuals But I think that today we are witnesses of a contradictory behavior, because if it is true that we are witnessing the rise of spontaneous committees like in Italy, on the other hand, at the state level, Europe shows off an unprecedented lack of solidarity. All the EU member states gave 27 different responses and proved to be reluctant to agree on any plan, either humanitarian or economic. In the case of Italy, for instance, the only ones to provide a prompt help to the country so far have been three non-European actors, Russia, Cuba, and China. And how do you explain such a paradox? Are we really going in the direction of a supportive and cohesive world, according to you?
This a good question. Thank you for all questions, of course. But this is interesting because I actually lived through that. I mean, because for my work, I'm so much connected with Europe. I'm visiting several times during the year, the capital of Europe, Brussels, etc. And actually, I felt kind of very upset, just through this lack of solidarity. And there have been these declarations on the part of the European Central Bank, and that was another disappointment. And I was really shocked, hearing these first declarations. And recently, this turning around, the recent developments about how European Union could help out to Italy or not. But I think here I don't want to this is sort of disappointment. There is this disappointment. But I have two explanations to that. First of all, I'm from Italy, and this is the country of Machiavelli, so let's study this level from a political point of view. Unfortunately, politics is politics. Okay, my answer wouldn't be very nice and very, civil society perspective. But unfortunately, politics is politics, and the politics is going around. Unfortunately, at the end, even though there are so many other narratives around it, so many nicely, prepared narratives around that, at the end, politics is all about power. And that is a kind of very sad part of our human condition. This is one explanation. Second explanation is, okay, European Union, of course, that explanation should not be actually enough to understand the very idea of European Union, because European Union has its own philosophical, cultural, and I can add religious foundations. And this is a union which is inspired by ideas so much linked to the social doctrine of the Catholic Church, social doctrine of the great philosophers of Enlightenment, and all of them. I could just cite Kant, some others. In which you see the idea of seeing the humanity as the whole family, and always interacting them to understand our human condition. That's why, of course, I find it that from that point, with my second explanation, is actually bringing me to a contradictory situation. Then maybe this crisis, it's my actual hope and it's my expectation, would not finish in this way. But we can just understand the first thing, that maybe European Union should also, as I was saying, for the as human beings, as citizens, as residents, what we are actually discovering at this very moment, maybe European Union could rediscover again its roots and its ideals. And because most of the time there is a confusion. It's like an economic, union or whatever union. If we just this crisis actually shows us this union should have all the time, side by side, its philosophical, social, and cultural aspects in it, because otherwise it's not really, reflecting the idea of being together and acting together for the common good. That's another issue for all discourses that we are going on solidarity among human, some citizens, people of a neighborhood, or among states, etc., or among regional, actors. The idea of common good, which should be actually promoted in this perspective, what we are doing actually, what is our goal? It's just only now people are so much discussing, that okay, the health system is a health system which has only a goal making more profits. Does not work actually. What is our common? What's our goal? If we just put this goal as a common good for the benefit of the whole society, it changes complete perspective. Maybe the last word about then we could also, just not being so much upset about why the European countries have not become, that much in solidarity with Italy. But this solidarity shown by Russia, China, and Cuba, because we can just read it, or some other Italian journalists, read that through from a new understanding of geopolitics, because it's not something very new. We know it's not only the crisis, but in the recent, especially the last decade, we observe a rapprochement between Italy and Russia, Italy and China, and Italy last year signed an important memorandum with China about the new Silk Way. So it's not just pop up and then just helping out. There is, and also Cuba. This is also nice because there's a more, I would say, the romantic part of it, because in Italy, like maybe in most of the countries, especially young people having very deeply rooted socialist ideas, they love Cuba, and then just the very idea of the Cuban society. That makes us, but of course, every solidarity is so much appreciated. I don't want to be, fall into the trap of just a pure geopolitics and realpolitik, etc. Even just, Albania, our neighboring country, is a very small country, a relatively very poor country. They also would like to, show a solidarity for Italy, and that was, I think, symbolically very powerful, I guess, because it's just you're China and you're Germany. This is another case, but this is Albania. I'm not just saying it is. I don't want to just humiliate any other country in the world, but that makes the thing a little bit more valuable symbolically, because I think the Albanian case could teach also some European countries. This is a country just some days ago started negotiations, and with very relatively limited economic conditions, but it says I'm also in. I would like to make my contribution. In Turkish we say I would like to put my salt into the soup, and this is some grains of salt they would like to put into this soup. It's so much appreciated by the Italian people. Actually, I really felt myself very consolidated through this act of charity from Albania.
Now, continuing with this idea of solidarity and what this time of crisis may teach us or may make us aware of, I'm under the impression that some of us are starting to understand that humanity is a unity. It's something that's really obvious, but we don't really apply it in our daily lives. So we see now with this virus that it doesn't choose us because you are, I don't know, because of your faith, your religion, your culture, ethnicity, or sexual orientation. So it shows us that, ironically, a virus is more inclusive than human beings are. So in regard to that, my question would be, how can we best use the premises of this crisis to promote unity and equality of treatment for all?
Mm-hmm. Well, yeah, this is an interesting observation, actually. Yes, virus does not make any discrimination, unfortunately. Well, the idea of unity, yes, sounds good, sounds fancy, but I would like to little bit, I'm a little bit suspicious about using the term unity all alone. unity would be a value. I mean, could be a value, could be a virtue to be achieved with a sine qua non condition. That is recognizing all the diversities within this unity. Because unity, of course, it doesn't mean unification, homogeneity. Of course, we know that. But sometimes we could just make the confusion about that. The unity, we usually need that. I mean, just in order to make a society function or something, even in a very small business, we need sort of a harmony. I can just use this word too, among different aspects of this society or different components of the society and business, etc. This premise, what can just be learned from that? Well, first of all, it's kind of teaching us that I'm just maybe just repeating that, just our fragility as human beings at the level of health and our, fragility, in terms of life and death. And that's another thing, maybe it's a little bit, how can I just formulate that? Sort of a delicate issue. I'm trying to find a good wording for that. Because, okay, with the secularization of the society, death or issues about dying, even though sociology is interested in that, always there is a section called sociology of death. This is part of human reality. It's usually something we are trying to put into the parentheses, the bracket. It's not, because if by definition the secular, this is our time, we are not so much interested in the past or in the future. I mean, this is what this with the wording in English, hereafter. Hereafter. It's not here, and the secularization was actually has been pushing us to the idea of just focusing on only what we are doing here. Of course, it isn't totally a metaphysical issue. I'm not just discussing here, okay, now there's a virus, people will start no, it's not my discourse. But this actually brings us at a point, we can also talk about death without just hesitating too much about it. I'm not talking about per se what will happen to after death. This is a totally metaphysical religious question. We cannot measure that. We cannot discuss it within the area of I will say social and social studies. But on the other hand, this is part of our life, and the services provided by the public institutions are related to that. Because now, for instance, the both parts, part of our constitutions, recognized by the European Convention and the Declaration of Human Rights. Sometimes they call it first right, first freedom, religious freedom. Now this is actually another way of discovering that religious freedom, to what extent we can actually realize that. There are this diversity, as you have mentioned, among people, but also to concern the religious diversity. People now, most are dying alone, and they could not have the religious service at funerals, and when they were dying for the Catholic faith, I will say, there's a last moment of a blessing of the priest. They could not receive that, and this is a very sad moment. But just trying to be again pushed to rediscover maybe some events of life that we are not so much paying attention. That could be maybe another way of looking at the humanity, just saying that, okay, this is because usually it's not maybe the theme of this subject matter, but sometimes, especially since I'm involved in interfaith gatherings, and we are so much focusing on diversity, of course, difference on our faith, differences in our religious practice, etc., etc. But sometimes we are trying to find a common point, a common denominator among everyone else, every human being around the world. And usually this is death, actually. Because people they are not agreeing, is there a creator or not? There is a creator, there's no creator, it's a coincidence. Hereafter, okay, this is another issue, and there are, almost, 2 billion people, or at least 2 billion people, more than 2 billion people living in this world, and they believe they will come back, after the death to this world. And they say, okay, I will always come back, and then just, there's a reincarnation, and this is another aspect of our life. And usually people who are living in the Western part and so much engaged with the monotheistic, religions, they are not paying attention to this, religious discourse. But, we can multiply that. Is there a revelation, no revelation, etc., etc. Angels, no angels. But everyone else is agreeing, and there's death. Death is a common denominator. No one is, discussing if there is death or not. Death is over there. Unfortunately, it's touching everyone else. And I think we shouldn't be so much sad about it. That could really help us. Again, just, the question, virus is, not discriminating. That is also, even though it's depicted very ugly, in the movies and the paintings, etc. All the sculpture in Rome too, everybody in Italy, it's a very, usually an ugly man, etc. But it is also this, they are the brothers, virus and death, because they are not discriminating people.
I was thinking, you were mentioning, like, reflecting on death. I don't remember who said that, but it goes like that. When you start reflecting on death, sooner or later you are going to start reflecting on life. So I think it goes really well with what you're saying. And really, once we start reflecting on our death, we can maybe act better during our lives, regardless of what we think of the afterlife. Yeah, thank you about this.
Thank you. I can cite Rumi, the Anatolian Sufi master. Actually, he has this list of, very short list of one word. if you want, and he says, if you would like to have a good advice, that is sufficient for you. So this is a formula, and this, of course, when I was focusing on that, this is, of course, my point. It's not just, pushing people, concentrating and obsessing with that. Not just taking into account, the reality of that, and just, inviting that into our life, so that we can just actually maybe, live, whatever is given, to us at a more, I would say, satisfactory level. That would be my idea. Yeah.
It comes to my mind also Heidegger, for instance. Mm-hmm. For Heidegger, death is at the base of the also morality. Man can be aware of his life if he takes into account death. And it's a paradox that man can project his life starting from death. I think the thought of Heidegger is is something very interesting also for the people of the 21st century. So
sure, very interesting.
And I would like also to draw attention now to the social media and how social media have changed the narratives, the discourses, because since the outbreak of coronavirus pandemic, discourses, narratives regarding the cohabitation of individuals with different background, ethnicity, culture, and religion have left the place to the global health emergency triggered by coronavirus. So my question is, What effects can the coronavirus produce in European societies at the social and political discourse level once the crisis will be solved?
Well, it is, yeah, since now we are actually in the middle of the crisis, maybe I don't know whether I could just give a sufficient answer to that. But of course, this crisis is showing us different problems that we haven't really paid attention to, especially, you know, in the use of social media, how the social media is sometimes becoming, for instance, this main problem is, okay, social media is an open space, so we can just do everything. I mean, everyone can just open up a YouTube channel, could just say whatever he or she wants, or you can just, you know, throw away whatever, you know, you would like to say in Twitter, etc. That freedom is perfect and just, you know, giving us a really lovely, you know, area of a public sphere, public debate, and then just that's crystal clear. But then the very issue of so-called fake news. I mean, the thing is, people, I mean, just putting all this information, and there's no, usually they are not checked. And we have this, I mean, since it's there's something new, we have this human beings, I think we have the tendency to take seriously things written, not very much said. I mean, that's just, if it's something written, it's just over there. And usually it's written as a fancy style and it's a nice website, or they just have some nice pictures. And it becomes very credible. Okay, that should be something that I should believe that. And I think that is something we are now interrogating, because formerly, even though they did also several harms to several people, several institutions, but now we are talking about life and death, and we are talking about the safety of people. So whenever there is this fake news, you know, it's challenging for all of us. And I think in the future, we will reconsider again, you know, the very role of not only social media, but also, I will say, how should we actually deal with, again, maybe, you know, it's related to social media. How do you name the things, you know, even then just, you know, people just discuss, oh, it was not a corona virus, it is something, we had this before. And then they would like to, you know, since the name already existed, people just put first up, you know, you remember that so many conspiracy theories, you know, oh, in 2015 or 2012, somebody was talking about a coronavirus, you know, I mean, just, and that was sufficient, you know, to produce some conspiracy theories. So people are just so much engaged with that. And then in my opinion, as at the beginning of the crisis, in most of the countries, we actually lost our concentration and we were distracted. The concentration what should be, and always should be, how to, you know, protect the human beings and then just, you know, save lives and, you know, provide the full public health for everybody. But now, you know, I remember, you know, oh, Chinese, even in Italy, people just hating Chinese people. I mean, they were not really thinking that just that could be, you know, very challenging for them, this virus. But oh, just let's, you know, Chinese, or there's a Chinese, don't go there. You know, in Milan, some people didn't go to the Chinese restaurants for weeks for that. And that's why I guess we will reconsider again. Maybe I will say something very challenging. It's not, I will say something totally against our postmodern, you know, understandings. Maybe we will need again to understand what is maybe true. You know, I mean, it is very difficult to say it in a postmodern society. There is no truth. You know, everything is very fluid, and then just we can rediscover, redefine everything in every moment. But, you know, in such a crisis, we actually we would like to, you know, hear the truth. I mean, what will happen actually, you know? I mean, where are we going? And because the instability and, you know, this ambiguity, you know, creates something very important, you know, unfortunately important, I say, to destabilize a society. That is a fear. Thomas Hobbes also starting with that, just the fear created by, the state apparatus, and then just people would like to, just get rid of this fear, and they're terrified, so they need some power. That's actually challenging, and we should be very careful about it, because this is a very delicate moment. This instability, ambiguity, etc., creating so much fear, and then people could, shift into, if it's not good handled. This is another also task, not only financial support. This is a very important task of the European Union, how to handle this social crisis so that people would not, shift into an area in which they would like to, get rid of this fear, looking for some authoritarian solutions. And something happened in Hungary, for instance. That's a very concrete example. So that is, I think that checks and balances in this area is very important, I guess.
Yes, and now it comes to my mind also the discourses we hear nowadays on the fact that China managed to control the spread of the spread of virus after 3 months, just because it's an authoritarian regime. So there is this discourse that an authoritarian regime that can impose, that can threat of death people if they go out of home, is the only regime that that is effective and can put an end to the crisis. So it's I really agree with what you
that's
said.
very dangerous. Just sorry, I would like to just add something. It's very dangerous because what I find really very stressful about it. Okay, this is an important crisis. This is pandemic, and we are all touched, by that, through information, etc., etc. We are very concerned about it. That's something true, and we have to agree on that. But the urgent matter of coronavirus does not postpone, does not cancel the other problems of the world, and they are very also relevant. The environmental issue, as you know, I'm sure you have seen what happened in Venice. I have been to Venice, I don't know, maybe 15, 20, I can't count that, just at least 20 times in Venice. I haven't seen channels like that. It is something, I'm really, there's people making lists, what would you do? It depends, they would like to go to the beach, they would like to take cappuccino, they would like to go to Piazza Venezia. My dream is, whenever this finishes, I would like to take the first train and go to Venice before these lovely waters become again dirty. Because the environmental issues over there, and it is also like this pandemic, it's related to all of us, and unfortunately, China is so much relevant in this scenario. Secondly, human rights violations, they are going everywhere. People again, and the churches are burned, people were killed for their faith, women were violated. For instance, in this very moment, we have to stay at home, but I'm sure you have read everything. Some associations trying to work that. Unfortunately, domestic violation and the sexual violence within the family increased incredibly. And this is, these problems still over there. So if I just only focus, okay, this discourse you were saying, of course, unfortunately, I read this too. Okay, they are resolving a problem because, they had this authoritarian regime. The same authoritarian regimes create so many other universal problems. Unfortunately, after the coronavirus would be gone, they will still with us, unfortunately. They will stay with us, and they will be over there. And if we just really are not finding any solution for the authoritarian regimes, and if somebody would like to promote the authoritarian regimes, they will, unfortunately increase in numbers. That would be the tragic result of that.
I mean, my next question is really linked with the last one, in the sense that we said that this time of crisis, we are starting to be aware of the fact that humanity is a unity, but in the same time, it seems that this crisis is a premise for far-right ideas to evolve even more in Europe. So I was wondering if you have some ideas on how we can curb this tendency, and is there anything actually that we can do to prevent people from embracing those kind of extremist ideas?
Good and difficult question. I think, yeah, this is, I mean, at one hand, of course, we are talking about a very, overarching, higher level. If we are talking about the societies, etc. But here, again, I will go back to the grassroots level activities, what civil society could do. That is much more related to your question. I think in every case, we are living in, I don't know, it could be our neighborhood, our building, etc., etc. We could, or we are supposed to become more active citizens, actually. It's not just only, okay, I'm a good citizen, I'm paying my tax, I'm respecting the rules and regulations, and I never ever, use plastic, whatever. So others, I can make a long list. That's good. But I think the very idea of solidarity should bring us to another level of being active citizens. And that is, maybe we can just, be more interactive with people, just showing our examples, I mean, the very idea, I think the challenge is usually people do need, usually, I mean, that's also for the social crisis that happens, they do need good role models, actually. They would like to see people who would like to, lead them to work together, because now also in the negative sense it can function. People just, okay, we are so fragile and we are left alone. So what will be the solution? We need some powerful man, they can just lead us and they can just, overcome these problems. And whenever they, say something, it just never, no one will discuss that, and they will be done quickly. The idea is just, just also function in this way. Let's take this example of role model, and that role models, we can just work on that. That could be true, of course, with artists, musicians. They would be also good help, I guess. How can we just really give this hope for the future so that people can actually know themselves through art? Maybe I will be a little bit idealistic, but whenever we will be discussing these issues, my fear is we do have these instruments, we do have these tools, to discuss that and to tackle the problem. But most of the time, citizens or human beings that we see in a way that you are maybe shifting into authoritarian thinking, they don't have the same tools and the reflections we have. So that's another challenging point, because I would like to also just make this comparison with the very idea of seeing the world, we're connected, internet. I just was saying that, just forgetting about that. Seeing internet as a open platform. That's true for us. There are so many people who don't have internet connection. Now we are talking about distance learning, for instance. I have seen in different countries, Turkey, for instance. In Turkey, so many students feel that they're discriminated because they don't have a personal computer, they don't have enough internet connection to follow up the courses. My university in Istanbul, Bosphorus University, sent me a message, I guess yesterday, if I would like to make a charity to buy internet connection for the university students who could not come to the university anymore. This is one of the important universities of Turkey. Even this university could not actually provide now internet connection for all its students. Another thing is, all the whole world is the same, and just be okay. What are televisions or the health, assistants to just saying that, or the health ministers, everyone? Very simple. You need only water and soap. And the United Nations make the declaration. 3 billion people in the world, they don't have access to soap and water. Okay, this is, I think, just coming back to our case, since we are worried about that, authoritarian regimes, etc., we should actually change our paradigm. We should look from a different perspective to the things. Maybe I would say just really going to these people, just not putting the, I'm not, of course there are some limits, not to violent people, but not just staying here and then just shouting, this is what we are. I mean, I'm in civil society, egalitarian, respecting, gender, etc., and please come here. And this is the best place. We have internet connection, soap and water. Come here. This is nice. No, it's not. I think the idea should be this. If I really would like the active citizens and what I really understand from civil society, I should, leave my comfort zone and I go to these places, go to these people. It's very challenging, of course. I mean, just imagine that I just go to, I go to a, civil society organization promoting interfaith dialogue, peace and education. Very nice. Okay, let's go to a far-right association and saying that I'm a Muslim and I'm trying to promote interfaith dialogue, and we just, shall we do something together? Okay, it's not, of course, but I can find a common point. And for instance, now at 6 o'clock, I'm just trying to go to my balcony and just I'm not a good singer, but I'm just trying to sing a little bit. And at least the national anthem, I recite with the people around. But I'm just, looking around. Some people have a very, powerful nationalistic ideas that I can observe. But at that moment, at this particular moment, I'm not so much paying attention to that. I mean, just the thing is, we are just coming together. We are just, seeing each other. It's a very joyful moment because I see people. Even though this is another paradox of the urban life. Now I'm seeing people that I have been living so close to them, but first time I'm seeing their faces. Because during the day, I was always out in the office, and when I was coming back, and there was nobody just in the balcony. What can they do after 7 o'clock in the balcony? Maybe, some kids, etc. And physically, I was so close with them, but I was not aware who are they actually. Now I'm seeing these faces, again, Levinas. I'm discovering myself in the faces of people around me. And this is, let's see, it's a long way, but I think it will teach us also how can we, produce a new discourse on inclusivism.